Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our city council meeting is now in session. First of all, I want to let the councilman members know that please speak into your mic. And when we make a motion, we need to speak clearly who we are. And when we second it, to be sure we speak clearly to let the city secretary know who seconded it. It just helps out with paperwork. Okay, at this time, I want to say thank you guys, all of you, for being here. I love to see people out in the audience. Makes me feel good that people are interested in about what goes on in our town. And that is wonderful. Because most of the time, I mean, we know we're good looking up here. So we love looking at each other all the time. But we much rather look out here and see y'all. Okay? So we like to see people in those seats out there. So thank y'all very much. Okay, if y'all would please stand for prayer, please. Lord God, I pray for this council meeting tonight. Give the council members wisdom and guidance as they deliberate on the items before them. May every decision be righteous in your sight for our benefit and for your glory. I also pray for the police and the first responders, Lord. Every day, first responders have to make difficult and complicated decisions. Help them to choose wisely and well in every situation. Give them clarity and help them to stay calm and collected in the most tense moments they face. Help them call out to you, Lord, whenever they don't know what to do. May they always keep their eyes fixed upon you. I also pray, Lord, for all the city workers and work that works for us every day. Because, Lord, if it was not for our workers to help us with the city citizens in taking care of things, we would all be lost. Thank you again, Lord, for listening to me tonight. In the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. And before we start the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to have just a moment of silence for a water worker in Bluebonnet that died due to this heat. A 36-year-old young man got heat exhaustion and passed away working for the Bluebonnet. So just have a moment of prayer, silence, please. Okay, thank you. Now we will do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one nation, under God, and one indivisible. Thank you. Y'all may have a seat. All right, I'm going to have roll call here. And to my right, we have Councilman Griffin, Councilman Prater, and Councilman Bass. And to my left, we have Councilman Wiggins and Councilman McGruer and our City Administrator, Kent Manton. And in the back, we have our our Police Chief, Michael Dorsey. We have Gene Sprout, our Waterworks Supervisor, Director. And we have Pam Combs, our City Secretary. And we have Danielle McGruer. She is our court official. Thank you. And I think that's all we have here with us besides you citizens. And I thank y'all very, very much. All right. Okay, at this time, we have any community announcements. And I have two. First of all, I want to tell people that we do have a food bank here in Bruceville-Eddy. And on Thursdays, he likes to go over to Lorena and pick up the food. And so he asked if there's anyone that could help him go over there, just a couple hours to go there and help pick the food up. then bring it back over here and put it inside the church, the First Baptist Church. And then on Fridays, he passes it out, and I think it starts at 5 to 7 on Fridays. And on Thursdays, it's from 11:30 to 12:30. So if anyone wants to help or do anything like that, we're asking people to go to the First Baptist Church and let Connie know this. Okay? All right. Okay, and my second one is, this will be a first time for us here in Bruceville-Eddy. And a young lady by the name of Miss Dorsey and I got together, and she asked me, you know, what about Blue Santa? I said, I never heard of it. So I've been checking around, and Blue Santa is police departments in different towns, and they get together and they put out boxes and they ask people to donate, whether they want to donate money, food, clothes, you know, new stuff, toys. And then the police department, they have places to fill out, paperwork to fill out. And these families come by and they fill this paperwork out, and then they make sure that these families get these gifts so they can have it under the tree for Christmas. So we're going to start that probably next month, I believe, and start getting some stuff done. But it's just a FYI to let y'all know what we're going to start doing. Okay? Okay. Mr. Bass?
There's an officer in Temple, I think he's a lieutenant, I can't remember his name, but he does that in Temple, and he has offered to help Bruceville-Eddy this coming year, so you might want to, Frida knows his name, but I can't remember it.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. McGruer?
As they get family information, it would be helpful to know like ages of kids and things like that, so we can buy gift appropriate.
Yes, ma'am. That's what the chief said he would be doing on that paper. You know, instead of saying a specific item that they want, their age group. You know, boy, girl, age group, you know, and all that stuff. So that's what he's going to have the paperwork ready for that. Okay. Anybody else have any more announcements? Okay. We will move right along. At this time, we have the citizens presentation. This is where the city council welcomes public comments at this point on items not specifically listed on the agenda, and that gives the citizen 5 minutes to talk about what they want to talk about, as long as it's not on our agenda. Do we have anybody signed up to do this? Okay, we're moving right along. All right. We're going to go to number 4. It's called Citizens Request for Consideration. Dorothy Coker. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on a request by Mrs. Dottie Coker to bale hay on city-owned land generally located off of Anna Hobbs Lane and in between the solar plant for the purpose of providing hay for her neighborhood cattle herd, and take that job away from the city workers. Okay? Okay, Mr. Bass?
I was thinking that, you know, in the past several months ago, Mrs. Coker leased that land from the city, and we agreed to lease it to her. And
I leased the 6.5 acres that was from between my property and the solar panels, not the corner of Anna Hobbs. I didn't lease that.
Okay, this is separate from what you've actually leased. Okay.
Right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Did you have something you'd like to say about it, Mrs. Coker?
Just that I think it would help y'all out a lot to where, and help the citizens out, once I keep it, you know, mowed down, the rats and all the other varmints that are out there will be able to be kept away.
I have some questions.
Okay. Mr. Prater, Councilman Prater?
Yeah, now, during the hay baling seasons is when you're gonna be taking it all down. What about during like the winter, and will you be taking care of it then too?
Yeah.
When you can't
yeah.
bale it?
Oh, I'll maintain it the whole time.
You'll maintain it the whole
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
All right, that's the only question I have.
It'll get shredded probably 2 times a year, in the spring and then in the fall, as long as we have rain. God's got to let go of some of this rain, please, Lord.
Yes. All right. If we don't have any more questions or anything, do I have a motion? Mr. Wiggins?
I make a motion that we let Miss Dorothy Coker bale the hay on the city-owned land located off Hannah Hobbs Lane.
Okay. All right, do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, Mr.
Richard
Prater seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Coker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie.
Real talk.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to be professional. so-
Thanks, Dorothy. Appreciate you coming out.
Number 5, Water Company of America contract. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on a contract with Water Company of America for the provision of services that will include data analysis and field investigation of the city of Bruceville-Eddy water system and billing software to search for missing billing opportunities with the end goal of increasing revenue and reducing water loss. We have any questions? Okay.
First
All
off, I just want to introduce you with Shane, correct?
Yeah,
Shane from Water Company of America, and he's going to give us a little presentation, and then I'll provide a few more comments on this before
All
we
right.
leave it up to council.
It's up to you, Mr. Shane.
Sure, I'll go through this real quick. There's a couple of slides. I just want to make sure everybody's informed about what we do and why we do what we do. And we'll take some questions if anybody has them. But do you have a clicker for me, Kent, or there you go?
There's a, yeah.
So, real quick, the problem that we all face, and I know you guys are facing this right now as well, unaccounted for water, right? Water loss is a big thing, especially in this day and age. We're talking about it every day. We see it on the news, water being an issue. And so it's important that we find ways to account for that water. Where is it going? Why are we missing it, right? One of our specialties is to look at the data in the billing and see, are we missing it really? Is it really going somewhere out in the system, or are we just not collecting it in the revenue properly, right? So we look at it two ways. We look at the accountability. We want to make sure ratepayer equity is right. We want to make sure that every dollar that can be brought in is being brought in on every bill because of codes or errors or anything in the system. We're going to look through that. Secondly, we're going to put boots on the ground and we're going to look, can we see where we're losing water out there in the field, out there in the system somewhere, that we can help you recover that, whether it's through the bill or some other source where we can get revenue back from that as well. So the ultimate goal is, 1, water loss, and 2, increasing revenue for you guys so that you can use it for some other project down the road, okay? Our program is a little different than most consulting firms that you have seen in the past, where you ask someone to come in and provide a service for you, and they give you a fee schedule for what they do, and you pay them that fee, and you get the results from them whether you like the results or not. That's not the way that we operate. We are a performance contractor. We've worked throughout the Southeast. We only get paid if we come in and we find something for you. So we do a deep dive into your utility billing system. We run it through some of our own queries. We start looking for anomalies that are out there. If we find something, we submit it to you so you can make the correction, whether that's in the software or in the field, and you start seeing an increased revenue. When you see that increased revenue and you collect that revenue, then that's how we are compensated. We take a share of that revenue for a period of time, okay? Benefits, obviously the benefit, number 1, we're reducing that water that's being lost. Number 2, we're increasing revenue that can be used for, in perpetuity, used for projects. If we don't discover all of the leaks out there in the system and our boots on the ground, maybe we can find some revenue that you can collect that you can use to help discover that leaks and stuff that are in the ground. So that's basically the way the program works. I'd be glad to answer any questions about it if you have. Yes, sir.
Conley Bass?
I have one question. I think you answered it. You don't charge the city anything unless you find something.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. There are no upfront fees, no contingency fees or walkaway fees. We take all the risk. We put all the boots on the ground and analyze the data. And then once we turn something over to you and you start collecting new revenue, then we invoice you for our share.
Yeah, your share is half.
Our share is 50% for a 4-year term.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Oh, and your
Yeah, that-
question's
yeah,
answered?
right.
If anybody else have any more questions?
50%, 50% for a 4-year term.
50% of the increased
The
revenue.
increased revenue, right, we understand there's a base revenue that you're already charging, right? And so it's only anything that we discover that is not being billed accurately, correctly.
But most of this seems like software an issue, right? When you say,
90%.
when you say put boots on the ground, explain that. What are you gonna do? You
Sure,
go-
90% of what we find is in the data, okay? It
Okay.
is a rate code that's wrong, a meter size that's wrong, so it's being billed improperly, things like that. But we have to put boots on the ground to confirm that, right? We're not just gonna look at the software and look at the data and say, this doesn't look right, it needs to be changed. We're gonna send somebody out to a residence or a commercial property and confirm, is this meter type right? Is this meter size right? Is this connection right? Does this business actually have two meters here and we're only billing for one? That's the boots on the ground part of it that we do.
Okay. So, so far as going out and looking for leaks, water leaks in our lines, y'all not gonna do that?
We're not gonna do
Yeah,
that. We are,
yeah.
when we're out there and we're doing our boots on the ground stuff, when we discover that, we're obviously
Right.
gonna turn that into
Right.
you and let you know what we found. But what we're really looking for is revenue and unaccounted for water.
Right, and you know, council will know that, I don't remember how many years, probably 3 years ago maybe, or 4, could be 4, that we put brand-new meters in, the smart meters in our whole system. We've had our software updated.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, to me, if we're getting, let's say if we have 2,000 meters, I'm just gonna throw that number out there. If we know that we have 2,000 meters out there, are we sending out 2,000 bills? Do we know that?
I couldn't answer that question off the top of my head tonight 100% accurately. No. I think the reason that this revenue recovery program probably isn't brought to a lot of utilities is because there is potential for the utility itself to have errors, right? We could have billing errors.
Right.
I'm not saying that we're 100% perfect on that, but bringing in a third party here that has incentive to find those areas for it and correct our issues, I think is going to be the ultimate good for everybody on that one. But no, I couldn't honestly say that our new software doesn't have some sort of user error that accounts in a billing issue.
Okay, and there's no charge whatsoever of any kind unless y'all find increased revenue, and then you get 50% of that increased revenue for a period of 48 months.
Yes, sir.
So it could be staggered out. In other words, you find an increased revenue on 1 meter. And so that increased revenue is for 4 years, and maybe a month later, you find something else on another. So that could be staggered out, right?
Yes, sir, absolutely it could.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And when we submit an invoice, it is very detailed by account so that you understand how many invoices you have received for that particular account and how many you have left to receive for that particular account. One other thing to note is if something happens with that account, if the business closes or something happens with that account and it goes away, we can no longer collect revenue on that, right? Because you're not collecting revenue from the same source.
Right.
That's to be understood.
Mr. Talbert, you had a question, sir?
Sir, would you mind coming up to the
Coming to the
microphone
mic,
just so we can
but-
hear it and everybody on YouTube
But we
can hear
can't,
it
the
too?
YouTube can't hear you unless you at the mic, sir. Oh, I know. You can't hear me?
Sometimes no, usually
Oh, really?
absolutely. But when you go out to boots on the ground, you check these meters for the size of different things. You're not going to be particularly looking for illegal taps or somebody that has serving 1 meter serving 2 homes, are you?
Absolutely we are.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That answered my question.
Thank you, sir.
We are looking for unlisted services, yes, sir. So if anyone is, and that's a state deal, right?
Yeah.
State regulation says
I
that we
heard
cannot give away public utilities.
I understand
That's
that.
part of our,
It's against the law.
yes.
But we have, a lot of people do. That's
All right.
quick.
Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Owens.
Okay.
It's also important to note, one quick, and then I'll get to you.
Okay, yes,
It's
sir.
also important to note that when we start a project, we always understand that there may be a hands-off list that you give us. You may have made some deals with some businesses and given discounts for certain reasons to get them in town, whatever the case may be. Or there may be accounts that you know are problem accounts that we just can't fix. It's in the middle of the highway and it doesn't make sense to try to dig it up and fix it, those types of things. So you give us that list on the beginning and we know which ones we should not really go after, okay?
Okay, Mr. Prater?
I was looking at your references, and all these places are like big places.
Yes,
And
sir.
there's only one in the state of Texas. What is it, Beaumont? Why small?
Sure, absolutely. So, why a small town? Because Mr. Kent picked up a brochure at a conference that I was at back in June and was intrigued with what we do, okay? That doesn't mean that we don't fit every size utility. You'll see some on there that are in the 1,600 and 4,000 and 5,000 and 7,000 accounts, right? We do those just as well as we do the ones that are the big ones, right? We're starting in Beaumont next week with 42,000 accounts, and the Woodlands next month with 32,000 accounts. But that doesn't mean you guys don't have the same problems that they do, right? We can put a limited number of resources here and get the same results that we can with the large number of resources that we have to put for those larger utilities.
Yes, sir.
So the company's been in business since 1989. First contract was with the city of Houston, and there's been 97 contracts since that day.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Wiggins?
Is there a rough time frame that once y'all get here about how long, with our size system, about how long it takes?
Once we get a ink on a contract, we're about 30 or 45 days before we're even ready to put boots on the ground because we've got to get the data from you guys and sort it through our program. And then we're probably boots on the ground for a matter of weeks, right, for 4,000 accounts. If it were 40,000 accounts, it would probably be 12 to 18 months. But I think you are around 4,000. I don't know exactly what the number is, somewhere.
No,
less
sir,
than that.
about 2,000.
2,000,
yeah.
yeah, okay. So a matter of weeks is all that it's going to be. So we'll be here, we'll be in and out, probably 2 or 3 people on boots on the ground, and we may not look at every single account, but we will have a list that we will go after that our queries will tell us to look for.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay,
Any,
thank you.
Mr. McGruer?
Okay, I noticed you got, me and this mic, we're not friends. Anyway, okay. I noticed you got on your fire service lines and emergency bypass lines. I know for a fact that one of the contractors was taking water from a fire hydrant and filling up their water trucks, and that's bypassed. If you identify that, you're going to be able to identify that they're taking water or somebody's taking
We
water?
would have to catch them in the act, and so
Right.
that's a matter of us, sitting and waiting and watching to try to make that happen. Most of the time when we're talking about fire line and bypass, it's an industry, a commercial property or something that has a dedicated fire line that may or may not be metered, but it's an emergency fire line, but there's a valve open and that's how they're getting their water. And we discover that. And it's not going through their meter that they're actually paying for.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, that
Anybody,
answers my question. I think.
anybody else have any more questions? Okay, Councilman Bass?
About 5 years ago, I think it was, Gene, you might remember this, there was a big meter that was discovered at Green Family Camp that had not been being read every month, and that was for like a swimming pool. It was a bunch of water, and then yes, but for a long time that meter was not read. It was overlooked somehow or another. I don't know. They probably didn't know the difference. But yeah, okay. But anyhow, you'll find stuff like that.
We will look for stuff like that,
Yeah.
yes. We will
Okay.
we will take a system map. I understand that you guys are real close to having your system GIS mapped, I believe.
Just got it last week.
Okay, we will take that and we may drive the whole system and just see what we can find out there that just doesn't make sense. A piece of property that looks like it should be on the system, but it's not, and do some investigation on that. So that's part of what we do as well. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Is there any more questions? All right, do we have a motion from this? Oh, you
Ms.
wanted
Mayor?
to
Yes, if
say
you don't mind,
something?
I just had a
Okay.
recommendation I wanted to throw out there.
All right.
I think Shane was able to hit most everything. But I just kind of wanted to mention that if a contract were to be approved, you know, this is going to be able to generate, what, 5% is what you're thinking in missed revenue, something like that? It varies. I know
It varies, absolutely it varies. It could be anywhere from $1 or $2 per account to $10 to $20 per account. We really don't know until we get the data and we start digging through it and seeing what's out there.
Good to go. So with that in mind, I'll just mention that this will take up some time from staff to coordinate the activities. The way the invoicing works is they send us those problem accounts, and then we have to approve the work orders, and then we're going to have to go out and check for stuck meters. We're going to have to change the accounting on our end to make sure everything's working correctly. Couple notes on this one. The contract has not yet been reviewed by the city attorney, and we have not reached out to Water Company of America's other clients or references. So I would recommend that we send this over to our city attorney's office, let them to give it a quick look over. This is the standardized contract. And then bring that plus the findings from the references back to council for further consideration.
I agree. Okay, and anybody have something they sing? Yeah, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay. Ricky Wiggins, I'll make the motion that for the Water Company of America, that we send our contract to our city attorney for review and contact current and past clients, bring back contract and finding from reference checks for council for further consideration.
Okay, okay, Conley Bass seconds it, Mr. Bass seconds that. All right, thank you, Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Bass. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you, gentlemen. We will check with our attorneys and stuff and see how this comes out.
Thank you, Mayor.
And
Thank you.
Kent will be
Appreciate
getting
it,
a hold
Shane.
of you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Have a
for
good night.
coming out and talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation.
You bet, thank you. Okay, Samco Capital, presentations of municipal debt and financial related considerations. Council to hear a presentations from Andrew Friedman, Senior Manager Director of Samco Capital on municipal debt and financial related considerations. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Andrew Friedman with Samco Capital Markets. Prepared what turns out is a very lengthy presentation, so I'm going to try to go through this succinctly, but I certainly want you all to ask plenty of questions and feel free to interrupt me as we go through this. The purpose of this, one, to introduce you to what I do for a living and my firm does, serving cities, for me in particular, as a financial advisor, what that means, and then going through when cities borrow money, how they accomplish that, what our role is in that process, and the other various roles that there are. And I'm sure that Kent can make this available to you all, but I wanted to put together just some information. Our firm's an employee-held owned firm. We operate exclusively here in the state of Texas, although we do have an office in Kansas. My team, my partner Mark McCliney, and then we have a third gentleman, Ryan Cunningham, that work with all of our clients. So we're the three people that you see at meetings that work for the 109 different municipal issuers that we represent here in the state, 64 of them being cities. So the bulk of what I do for a living is for towns like Bruceville-Eddy, work with Hewitt up the road from you all, work with McLennan County, but do a lot of work all up and down I-35, down to the Corpus area, all the way up into the Panhandle. So this is really our bread and butter, so to speak, of what we're doing as financial advisors to municipalities. And then, because we'll talk about this here in a bit, we've done over the last probably 6 or 7 years a lot of public improvement district financings where we've represented our city clients as they negotiate with developers for projects that the city's interested in. Some bios by partners and I that I won't go into detail, but to dive right into municipal debt, who are the relevant parties that we're talking about here? We've got the city and city council who is issuing that debt. And then you've got a number of different folks that are involved. On the city side, you've got a financial advisor. What we're doing is helping you all, one, understand what your needs are, and then to put together a plan of finance that ultimately gets you the money that you need for that project. How are we going about doing that, whether it's issuing general obligation bonds, certificates of obligation, revenue bonds. There's lots of different securities. We're there to help guide you through that process of what is appropriate and then how to repay that debt. It's important to note that we have a fiduciary duty to the city, meaning that we have to put our clients' needs above our own and certainly above the other side of the table if you consider that the city's sitting on one side of a table and negotiating against the other being the bond underwriters and ultimately the investors, because their interest as a bond underwriter or a bank is to their constituents, their shareholders, or the people that are buying their debt. We're here along with bond lawyers to represent your interests. So the other, key player to working with the city is a bond lawyer. It's different than your city attorney, but a lawyer just the same. But they offer ultimately an opinion as to the tax-exempt status of your bonds, which we can get into. But one of the reasons that municipal bonds are so broadly used and purchased in the market for any of our retirement accounts is you don't pay income tax on the interest you receive from your municipal bonds. You have to have a lawyer that writes an opinion that says the projects you all financed here at the city of Bruceville-Eddy and you sold debt for qualifies under IRS tax code. Also, bonds, debt obligations issued in the state of Texas go before the Texas Attorney General's office. They have to approve any bond issue before you can actually close on them. Your bond counsel takes you through that process. The other side being the underwriter or purchaser, that's an investment bank that's underwriting your bond issue. You all have sold debt and have debt outstanding right now that's either held by your local bank, which would be that similar role. You work directly with them, they hold your debt, you pay them. The bond underwriter buys the bonds from you and then they turn around and sell them to individual investors. Mostly that's insurance companies and things like that who are putting municipal bonds into their customers' retirement accounts as one of the easier way to think about that. You have a paying agent registrar. They basically facilitate taking your big bond payment and then breaking it up into the small pieces that go to the individuals who might own one $5,000 bond out of your $1 million bond issue. They help parcel all of that out to them. Lastly, you have a rating agency. When you borrow enough money, rather than just going to your local bank, you go through a bond issuance, you establish a credit rating. And that's akin to a credit score that any of us has. And these municipal credit ratings are done by Standard & Poor's, Moody's Investors Service, or Fitch Ratings. So when you go to borrow a lot of money, we put together as a financial advisor along with city staff an offering document, a prospectus, that is what investors would read to understand what it is they might be purchasing and who it is that they're going to lend money to. We also go to a rating agency and say we want an independent third-party rating so that investors can do an apples-to-apples comparison between New York City and Bruceville-Eddy. And believe it or not, their ratings matrix that they use to judge municipal credit ratings is meant to do exactly that. And so we would have a credit rating established, and that's something that bond investors look to because they might not know who Bruceville-Eddy is because they might be in other parts of the country, but they can say, okay, they're a AA- credit rating, and the interest rate that you garner on your loan is underpinned by how high your credit rating is. United States used to be a AAA credit rating. When the Treasury borrows money, they're down to AA+, but cities like Dallas, Texas, AAA rating, San Antonio, AAA rating, the Texas Water Development Board AAA rating. Most cities, especially your size, in the investment grade space, in the A+, but the lower your rating, the higher an interest rate bond investors charge. So it's important to establish that credit rating as you go through. The public improvement districts, and Kent had asked me to speak to PIDs, and we can go into more detail on this, but public improvement districts are really a different animal apart from anything that the city borrows, and that's because of really what their function is. and largely a public improvement district is you've got a real estate developer who's bought a large parcel of land and then petitions the city and says, we would like for you to create a public improvement district around the boundaries of this land that we own. And the purpose of that public improvement district is then to levy an assessment, so not a tax, but a fixed assessment on that land, that as the land is platted into individual homes, or whether it's multifamily, there may be commercial, there's a specific dollar assessment assigned to that parcel, and it's akin to an HOA fee that you may have in a neighborhood. It's akin to another property tax, except it doesn't function the same way that a property tax does. And so when PIDs are done, and they're being done more and more often in the state of Texas, as we've got so much development going on from people moving from California, or for whatever reason, the housing supply shortage that exists, seeing a lot of PIDs done, seeing a lot of developers approach cities to say, we would like to create a PID, here. And so, part of what we've been doing the last several years is educating our clients on that, so that they're not blindsided when they've got a developer knocking on their door, asking for something, and the city going, well, we don't even know what you're talking about. But ultimately, when a PID is done and it's the PID assessment, that revenue stream is used to pay for bonds issued in that PID. And the bonds are issued to pay for the infrastructure that's going in the ground. Streets, water, sewer, there's a host of allowable costs, because the PID statute, state of Texas, is what dictates, what legally can be done and what can be bonded against. So then those bonds are issued to repay the developer for let's make up a number and say $7 million that they had to put into the ground, not to build a home, not to build a shopping center, but to create a road and to put the water and sewer connections in the ground. It's for them to recover their upfront capital costs. And so then that annual assessment is passed on ultimately to the homeowner who buys a house in that subdivision. There's also a lot of law that within that statute that makes it very clear when somebody buys a home or is going to buy a home in a neighborhood that has, within a public improvement district, and has an assessment, that it's spelled out very plainly that this is an assessment that you're responsible for, and it's taken into consideration. So that's generally how a PID works, and we can go into more detail. But there's other folks that are involved then, from your typical, if Bruceville-Eddy were borrowing money to fix streets in town or build a new lift station, you've got a developer. And these folks sit across the table from you in the most literal sense. You are negotiating against them or with them to get to a product that they want to build and one that you want to have. And along with them, they've got their own lawyers, they've got their own financial advisor. And so the city has its bond counsel, it has its financial advisor, and then in addition to that, there is a PID administrator, which is just a third consultant that specializes in public improvement districts, in tax increment revenue zones, which we can, reinvestment zones, go into, but all looking out for the city. And all of those costs for all of those professionals are borne by the developer. So the city's not coming out of pocket to entertain, to negotiate a public improvement district. And for all the PIDs that we've been involved in, we generally insist at the outset that the developers sign up what's called a professional services agreement, where they agree to put $50,000 into to the city, and that's to pay for those professional services as you go through, because these negotiations are a lengthy process. And then when that money is diminished to say $5,000, that they'll keep putting money into that. And if for whatever reason the developer doesn't want to do that, or lets it run down to the $5,000 and doesn't replenish it, now the city doesn't have much of their professionals aren't going to continue to work on this project that the developer wants to do. So we've seen that work very effectively, but ultimately the city's not coming out of pocket, doesn't have financial exposure. One, to negotiate through a public improvement district, but two, when PID bonds are issued, it's also very clear that this debt is not debt of the city, that in no way could a bond investor come back and say, the development's not paying my semi-annual bond payments, the city of Bruceville-Eddy, you need to go levy a tax. to make sure I get my payment. It's incredibly clear that ad valorem taxes, your water and sewer revenues, no other revenue stream of the city can be used to pay back the developer. So it's a very isolated and segregated tool to protect the city should you all go down that route. And bear in mind, I'm not advocating for PIDs. We happen to work on a lot of them as our municipal city clients have brought us in and their projects that they want to do. And we've gained a lot of experience by way of that. So moving away from PIDs entirely, going back to what you all do day in and day out, how do you go about funding your needed capital improvements, whether that's water and sewer upgrades, AMI smart water meters, fixing city streets, building city halls, et cetera. Cities are capped, and y'all are going through the budget process now at how you can raise revenue. You are capped by Senate Bill 2 that says you can only adopt a tax rate that will generate no more than 3.5% above the last year's tax levy for your maintenance and operations side of your budget. So you're already kind of hemmed in on what you can do from the general operating side of your budget on an annual basis. The other side of your tax rate that most folks don't know, because you don't see this broken out in your tax bill when you get it, is the interest and sinking portion of your tax rate. That's the portion of your tax rate that's set every single year. It's not subject to that rollback, we used to call it, where you have a cap on what you can increase that on an annual basis. It has to be set at a level sufficient to pay your next year's debt service. And that tax rate can only be used, those revenues that come in can only be used to pay for your debt. It can't be used to go then, pay for city staff or to go pay for, a utility truck or something along those lines. Again, very segregated. So all of what we're going to talk about here, we're talking not about your maintenance and operations side of your budget, but the interest and sinking fund side of your budget and that tax rate. So your options are, unless you can build up a piggy bank of reserves to go and pay for a project with reserves you've built up, which state law has come in and the legislature's come in and said, we don't want you to do that. We're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to make it to where you cannot build up much of reserves or beyond a pretty small amount. The only way to make capital improvements is to go and borrow money to do so and then to pay that money back over time. First option, they're called general obligation bonds. General obligation bonds are authorized by the voters, meaning that you can take a voted proposition to the electorate twice a year in May and November. You get greater than 50% of people in favor of that who turn out to vote, then you have an authorization to go issue up to that amount of money. So if you say we've got $5 million in street projects, you can go put that on the ballot for either May or November of each year, and then assuming it passes, the city has at its option the ability to go borrow up to, but not in excess of, that amount that you put on the ballot, and for those purposes. And depending on the projects that you want to do, it could be in a single proposition, or if you wanted to do a new city hall or a library and streets, you might have multiple propositions, and a lot of that's dictated by state law at this point. So most often you see these done for street drainage improvements, municipal facilities, and for rolling stock fleet vehicles. What you don't see general obligation bonds used to fund would be utility system improvements. And the reason for that being that I would say prudent financial management is that your utility rates should be set sufficient to fund itself as a standalone business. Now, not all cities work perfectly that way, but that's certainly the driving principle that we look at. And we've had cases where a city has had a utility project they were forced to do by the TCEQ under a mandate, and they said, we're going to take it to the voters. Voters turned them down. Well, they still had to make those repairs because the TCEQ was fining them on a daily basis until they were brought back into compliance. So they went and borrowed through revenue bonds, which don't have to go to the electorate. And all of the people who voted no came back and said, why did you ask if you were going to go and do it anyway? And so there are certainly times when you don't want to go ask the voters. You all are elected and charged with the task of understanding the nuance of what's going on at the city and making the determinations of when to borrow money and the most prudent way to do so. Now that example I give has happened to me one time in my career, but it's a cautionary tale. The other thing to note, bond elections do cost money, and I don't know what they cost for you all. It varies certainly city by city and which time of year you're holding that election, but could be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000, whether it goes your way or not. They do bear a cost. On the opposite end of that spectrum are revenue bonds. Revenue bonds do not carry an ad valorem tax-backed pledge, meaning that you can only pay for the debt service payments out of the revenue stream you're pledging. Most often you're going to see that's a utility system revenue bond. You all have water and wastewater system revenue bonds outstanding, meaning that if your utility doesn't make enough money, you cannot levy an ad valorem tax to repay those bonds. It's legally prohibited. You don't see these done as often. Certainly large utility systems do them, but they don't get done as often, especially in communities this size. And we'll go into that because there's another type of security that's used much more often called certificates of obligation that we can talk about next. And the reason for that is revenue bonds carry very strict or more restrictive bond covenants, meaning promises that you make to the bondholder. And some of them most typically are, not all of them are this way, that you set what's known as a rate covenant. We're going to generate net income in excess of 25% of our annual expenditures in that utility to give that bond investor a cushion to know that you're making more than enough money to pay for your ongoing operations and pay their debt service, pay that debt service to them. So what that ultimately leads to is setting utility rates higher than they need to be so that we maintain that cushion. It's also harder to issue new revenue bonds in the future should you have the need because they have what's known as an additional bonds test, which is also akin to that same test and metric. And then lastly, you have to fund a debt service reserve fund. And this is something that you all do have, I think in the amount of like $267,000. And that's basically a reserve for the bondholder in the event you don't have enough money to make a debt service payment at any one time. There's a pot of money that's being held for the life of those bonds, and it's generally equal to the average annual debt service on the bonds. And so, in my mind, all things being equal, that's money that you have tied up for the simple sake of having an additional cushion for a bond investor that you just don't have access to for what may be 20 years or longer. So some of those things you can avoid by issuing certificates of obligation. Now, certificates of obligation are more of a hot button issue over the last several years. Every legislative session, there's a very solid attempt by the legislature, factions of it, to eliminate certificates of obligation because the simple fact that they don't go to the voters for approval. Again, I'm not advocating one versus the other, but I do believe, and my experience has been, that many cities and counties use certificates of obligation appropriately, and most often that's to fund utility system improvements, to avoid having to set rates higher than they need to be, to avoid putting money into a piggy bank that you can't touch until you make your last debt service payment. Certificates of obligation carry the ad valorem tax pledge of the city. They also carry utility system pledge of revenues, what's known as a double barrel pledge. But you can choose to pay them from one source or the other or some combination. And that allows for a couple of things. It allows for you to fund multiple projects that may be very different from one another. $500,000 for streets, $2 million for a lift station, sell them together as one $2.5 million certificate of obligation. You pay for the streets out of your general fund, you pay for your utility system improvements out of the utility fund, and you only incur the cost of financing one time rather than borrowing in multiple efforts and incurring the costs of doing so. So there's an economy of scale that you get by utilizing certificates of obligation. Now, while they're not voted on by the citizens, they are subject to the right of referendum, meaning that if you all proceed with issuing certificates of obligation, that first legal step to do that is to notify the public that you're considering doing that. And that's done by a resolution by the city council that is called a notice of intention resolution, and it spells out the city council is going to consider borrowing an amount of money not to exceed blank, $2 million. And we're going to consider the sale of these obligations at our August 24th city council meeting. And it's going to be for the purposes of streets, water, sewer improvements, park improvements, whatever it may be. And then you post that on your website, you post that in your newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks. If folks don't like that you're doing that, they can pull together a petition forcing the certificates of obligation to an election. And the threshold for that petition to stop the issuance is only 5% of your qualified voters. So that was intentionally set very, very low. And while it doesn't happen very often, at least in my experience, because we would steer you away from hot button issues that you might want to use certificates of obligation for that would generally rile people up and you know, cause consternation in the community. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And then it forces it to a bond election just as though it were a general obligation bond. So the pros and cons of each, certainly in my mind, the pros of doing COs, it's generally less costly than general obligation bonds. You don't have the bond election costs. You get the same interest rate, COs versus GOs. There is no difference because the investors and credit rating agencies just look to its ad valorem tax backed, which is the full faith and credit of the city essentially. They're quicker to issue. You don't have to wait until one of those 2 uniform election dates. And then the cons really being the less perceived input from the voters. So again, things to weigh, and certainly it's project by project that I certainly urge my clients to look at when considering whether a CO is appropriate or not. It's also worth noting that in the 2021 legislative session, they have made changes to certificates of obligation and what you can finance. You cannot go issue COs for a city hall. For a new city hall, you can't issue them for a new library. So I think they will continue to whittle away at that in Austin for the years to come, as you inevitably have, one city somewhere in the state of Texas that does something that doesn't pass that smell test and creates a lot of drama. Amarillo was the last one that did it just a year and a half ago. That had a lot of eyes looking at them trying to build a civic center with COs that drew a lot of ire. But they're certainly an appropriate tool in a lot of instances. So again, I think I've covered this, but COs can be repaid from multiple revenue streams. Revenue bonds can only be paid from their revenue stream. General obligation bonds only from taxes. But those COs allow you to really blend the two. The last one to mention is a tax note. A tax note doesn't go to the voters. A tax note isn't subject to petition, but it's limited in that you can only amortize that debt over 7 years. So what that functionally does is it really caps your ability to fund much substantially with a 7-year tax note, because the debt service payment on an annual basis for a 20-year certificate of obligation is much lower than a 7-year tax note. Most often you see these done in lieu of capital leases for things like police vehicles and fire trucks. And I will tell you, and lots of cities that do capital leases all the time, the interest rates that you pay on a capital lease are much, much higher than you can pay when you borrow on a tax note under your own credit rating. See that time and time again, so it's worth considering as you all look to that. So some of this I'll try to briefly or try to go through, and it's certainly not to skip over anything, but there's just a lot on here. Generally, you sell ad valorem backed debt. about this time. In order to comply with truth in taxation, you have to have sold the debt before you can set your tax rate for the coming year. And then you would levy for that. You get your debt service, or you get your property tax revenues by January 31st, and your first bond payment happens in February. And so because we can't have too much time elapse from when you sell the bonds, because you're accruing interest to the investor, you generally see bonds and tax debt sold in the summer months right before your budget and kind of part of that process. Revenue bonds, on the other hand, can be sold throughout the year, really whenever you want or whenever the project needs dictate that. For calling a bond election for August, you have to call it, for a November bond election, you have to call it in August. And if you call it for a May bond election, you have to call those in February. So that kind of backs up your timing when you're preparing for a bond election, kind of where you need to be in the planning process, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then when you borrow money, tax-exempt money, the IRS wants to see that you spend that money on the project, at least 85% of it within 3 years. And that was from the tax reform in 1986, where you had cities that were borrowing at, let's just make up a number and say 5%, and they were earning 6% or 7%. They don't want you arbitraging that opportunity. We're in one of those environments right now, where you can go borrow money at 4.5%, and you're immediately making probably close to 5.5%, 5.25% in your tax pool accounts at the moment. So if you're making money, they don't want you to be borrowing money for the express and purpose of doing so. So going into, and I don't know if this is particularly helpful or germane to the conversation, but I wanted to include some slides because I've done this presentation in one form or another many times. When you're talking about, okay, we want to have a bond election, what's the best way to go about doing that and to try to have a successful one? And so what follows is kind of my spiel for how you go about doing that. And it really begins with community involvement. I've had the chance to work with some retired school superintendents who exclusively conduct school district bond elections, and there's a high rate of success. They pull together immediately a citizens advisory committee, and they go through whatever it is that you need, whether it's a new city hall or, for schools, it's new schools, and they go and take this group of citizens who want to be there, along with, staff, elected officials. Let's go tour the facilities and see what kind of condition they're in, get a baseline for, what the need is. And that group might meet, weekly or twice a month for a couple of months, going through what all of these capital needs are, ranking them, determining a priority, hearing from the different folks involved, whether that's architects, engineers, financial advisors, about what the cost of these things are. And ultimately, that Citizens Advisory Committee comes and makes a recommendation to the City Council that says, we've gone through all of this. We understand the cost of the project, how it would be repaid, and what that burden would be for the homeowners. And we would like for you to call a bond election for these projects at this amount. And what that does is it establishes a real buy-in from the community and the people that are out there, because as elected officials, you all cannot go advocate for or against a bond election. So, y'all are pretty muzzled from what you can do. But when you've got a Citizens Advisory Committee who's played an integral role in understanding what the needs are and what they would like to see happen, they're the folks that are out there in town talking about this and advocating for the needs and the projects themselves. And I've seen that work to great effect many times. And this really just goes through what we've walked through here. And certainly, the wanting a project, a new city hall, is one thing, and then understanding how much they cost and how that's going to affect your bottom line. That it's important for your financial advisor to, be in that process at some point, because it's one thing to say this Taj Mahal looks great, and it's another thing to say, well, your property taxes are going to go up $1,000 a year to pay for it. All of a sudden, people's priorities shift, and it's important to kind of have that understanding early on in that process. So again, this is just kind of going through how you go about establishing, prioritizing your capital improvement plan, and communicating that. And this is just a sample kind of timeline. If this is where you were today, September of 2023 or nearly September, and wanting to have a bond election in May, how that, might look from creating that Citizens Advisory Committee all the way through issuing the bonds, collecting your first year's taxes, and making that first year's debt service payment, and through, I guess, project completion, assuming you get it all done in 3 years. So really the last thing that I wanted to cover, for this was I took a look at what your outstanding debt is, to understand, kind of your financial position, look at your 2022 financial audit. And so going through, you've got 4 series of bonds or obligations outstanding. The first 3 that are at least still outstanding are revenue bonds. You've got $267,000 in reserve accounts on those bonds. And then the last financing that you did in 2015, you issued certificates of obligation, which made sense in my mind that at some point you all made that determination that you could get a more cost-effective financing in place. But all of your debt is supported by your utility system. You all don't levy an INS tax rate, which I'm sure you're all more than aware of. But looking at your taxable assessed values, knowing that you don't have a tax rate, I just did some back of the envelope math. The rule of thumb that I use is when you talk about borrowing money for long-term projects, assets that are going to be on the ground 20 plus years, typically advise you borrow money over a 20-year term, even if the asset's going to be outstanding for much longer than that. And every $1 million you borrow, it basically takes $80,000 a year in principal and interest to repay. And so on your taxable assessed value, and I don't know what your 2023 taxable values are, but I do know last year y'all had a nearly $90 million tax base. That's roughly 9 cents to support every $1 million you borrow, whether that's for streets, a rec center, you name it, and that's $90 per $100,000 of home that you own. So you can do the quick, extrapolate that math or interpolate it to understand what the impact might be for any project. So then the last thing I did was look at, okay, all of your debt is paid for out of your revenue, your utility system. How much money did the utility make? What were your operating expenditures? And then, so what's left over for debt service? Well, based on fiscal 2022, you had $775,000 that was theoretically available for debt service. Now, things like one-time capital outlays for pay-go type projects or improvements that you're making aren't taken into consideration. But that was how much money was left. And then you had a $310,000 bond payment. So that leaves a surplus of $464,000 that you could bond against if you had projects. I have no idea whether there's projects for you all to do. And I don't know that snapshot that we're taking is even very accurate, because what we would like to do, after that is visit with city staff to say, okay, here's what your audit is showing. Realistically, what one-time capital improvements do you have? What is the transfer that your utility is making to the general fund to pay for staff time operating the utility? And lots of those nuances to drill down to a more accurate figure. But this gives you a good snapshot that there's potentially money to do. A lot of small utility systems might generally make that much in a year, but they're also paying for improvements on an annual basis, whether that's saving up for a couple of years and then replacing that lift station. At a certain point, though, you might run into a project that is so expensive that it's unrealistic to be able to save up, and then you need to access the capital markets and do a bond financing. And whether that's through the Texas Water Development Board or going to the bond markets or going to your local bank, is all part of the decision and discussion that takes place as you start to understand the project and those needs. And that covers it. Kent, I had sent you this public improvement district presentation. I don't know if you prepared that for this or not. I don't know if you want me to go into greater detail than I just kind of went into at a high-level view. I'm used to seeing a lot of eyes glaze over because what I do for a living is not very interesting. So I don't want to.
Andrew, no, we appreciate you coming out.
Yes, we
the,
do.
The goal of this was just to kind of educate and inform and give council the tools that they're going to need to execute some of the projects down the road.
Yes.
For council's context here, we did go through an NOI for the certificates of obligation on our sewer system a little bit earlier in the year, and those will be a combination of the double barrel, as you said, against property taxes and revenue streams. But forward thinking, if we want to talk about some major road improvements, if we want to talk about upgrading some of these water lines in different parts of our systems, we've got some tools to do that. They're just a little bit complicated. And so we've got to have good partners who understand kind of the system, how it works, and how to get us a good interest rate, how to get us the money that we need for these projects. So.
So we want to thank you very much. Is there any question? Anybody have any questions for him or anything? Well, we want to thank you, sir, for coming and giving
You're very welcome.
giving us your presentation. Because as I said, Kent and I had listened to it a little bit beforehand, and so I think it was very educational for our council members.
Oh, good. Hopefully it was long enough in between that you were able to
Learn
push,
a little
push
bit
all
more
the
also.
boringness out of,
Yes,
out
sir.
of your mind.
Yes, sir.
I definitely learned something, and just in case anybody's interested, it's on YouTube now, so you can go back and rewatch
Rewatch it again.
Yes.
Guarantee I'll be the one person who doesn't rewatch me.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to get the police chief's report. So Chief Dorsey, do you have a report you want to give us?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and want to thank all of our citizens for being here tonight. Always enjoy seeing everybody out in the audience.
He was just a little more windier than you are. Nobody heard him.
Tonight, I wanted to start out with presenting our police department report from the month of July. Our calls for service, we had 147 reports to include arrest, offense, and incident, total of 11. Crash reports, total of 6. Citations and warnings, total 175. 116 citations, 59 warnings. Also would like to share our other activities for the month. On security checks, we had 167, neighborhood patrol activities, 148, and directed traffic enforcement, 52. Also included our call type report breakdown for the month, and also our citations and warnings data for the month as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Last month, Mr. McGruer, Councilman McGruer, and I hosted a personal safety presentation. I had a lot of fun with that. Definitely
liked
looking
it.
forward to hosting another one soon. We did have a pretty good turnout. We got some really good feedback and had some citizens ask some good questions, and they were definitely engaged throughout the whole presentation. So I think we got some good information out there. And we're definitely looking at ways to improve it and make it bigger and better every time. So, but we're talking about hosting another one sometime in October. Should be some more information on that next month. I'm also looking forward to doing a Blue Santa program this year. I need to gain some weight in order to be Santa, but I'll see what I can do.
Lots of pillows.
But no, I'm looking forward to that. I want to go ahead and kick that off next month to put that out there and have it, have it available and have it out there so we can have donations coming in for as long as possible, so that way we can reach out and help as many families as we can.
A lot of families.
So I definitely think the bigger the number, the more people we can help, the better.
Amen.
So I definitely want to offer that assistance to as many families and kiddos as we can, and
Yes, sir.
make sure everybody has a good Christmas.
Yes, sir.
So I'm really looking forward to that. As far as our community group, the Be Safe Community Group, it started off a little slow. We currently have 7 members. But I am going to, now that school's back in session, I'm going to reach out to the school and have them put that information out there and put up some more flyers and maybe put some information out on Savvy Citizen. I know we're growing on there.
Yes.
So get that put out there, and we'll see what the next month brings as far as growth in that program. But it's something I'd like to continue to make better and continue to grow and get more members signed up, more citizens signed up. Other than that, I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
I want to say one thing on the demonstration that they gave for an active shooter was very good. And when they do another one, I suggest all citizens, if they can, to come out to it. It is very good. I mean, there was even a ferry there, and they didn't even shoot the ferry. I mean, what can I say? I mean, they protected this ferry. I mean, she had wings and everything, but she was taken care of. They didn't hurt her. But anyway, it's really a good thing for y'all to come out and watch. They do a very good demonstration, and you're surprised. People think, okay, a crime, something like that, it takes for a long time. You'll be surprised. So next time they have one, I suggest all citizens that can try to be there. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Mr. McGurr?
Just one comment on it.
Mike, please. Yes, sir.
Just one comment real quick is Chief Dorsey and I had talked, and what we'd like to do for like the October one is we're going to focus a lot of the personal safety around Halloween and taking your kids out for Halloween and things like this. Show you ways to be a little more aware of what some of the dangers are and how to protect against them. And then we're talking about possibly doing one around Christmas, so people understand when they're out shopping, and these are the targets that the community should be aware of. So we're going to focus them on what's going on at that time period.
Yeah, they even let our live shooter come into this council meeting tonight. Colton over here, he was our live shooter, and he got arrested by the chief. Carried out in handcuffs. It was fun. But anyway, thank you, Chief, very much.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you all.
Chief.
Okay, Public Works Director report, Gene?
So, I mean, everybody got a copy of the work order list. We had 9 leaks that we fixed. One of them we found to be a pretty good leak. We were trying to get pressure back in at Friendly Oaks after we got it online. Could never get the pump station to catch up. Well, found out there was a 6-inch leak on Old Bethany Road that you couldn't see because it was running under the road in through a culvert that nobody knew was there. So we started working at it and found it and got it fixed, got everything back up and running over there. We're still having problems with the Heart of Texas now, to come to find out, on that VFD. It'll trip out once or twice a day, and we have to go over there, and luckily we go and check it 3 times a day because it's got low voltage. Or it's, and they had no problems, and now we can see where the issues were, and it helps y'all to know that, the electricity is what's causing the problem that we had before. But we got everything up and running, everything's pressured up, and everything's been going good this last week. Get on the streets and patching. Mr. Wiggins had requested let's go ahead and get 2 or 3 totes of that rock asphalt before school started, and we did that. It's not on the list because I didn't have a chance to put it on there, but around the 14th of August, we started patching on Eagle Drive, 2 totes. And we had them go to Franklin. Well, I gave them a list of work orders. Take this last tote and knock out these work orders. They used it and didn't finish Franklin. So we're out of material again.
Again, yeah.
But we did spend a couple of days trimming trees on Osborne and Temple so the county could come in there and get those streets knocked out.
They look great.
And Mesquite and Archie. So we did all 4 of those so they wouldn't have any problems. And that's pretty much all I got.
Anybody have any questions for Gene?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggins?
Gene, what did the electric company say about the
We
low
have
voltage?
not, Wallace came out because I was concerned because why did it trip? So they came out there and they found some codes in the cabinet for the VFD that told them it was low voltage faults. And I don't think Johnny wrote them down because I wasn't there when they went out there. Johnny met them out there. But I'm going to keep track of when and how often it's happening. So hopefully we can get with the electric company. We're still waiting on Wallace to come out, hopefully tomorrow, and start working from the meter base back to the building, replacing that stuff.
And on that point, what council approved as a part of those repairs is a metering system that is going to be built by Wallace. And that will record all the issues that we're having from Heart of Texas and be able to give us a report so we can go back and tell them, hey, you're having an issue with this. You need to upgrade lines. You need to upgrade transformers. You need to do some substation work or something like that. So we're not having VFDs trip all the time.
Right. And we're still,
When are we gonna get to it?
I think they've had some other system issues. They got the VFDs installed for us, so at least our pumps are protected, but they still have line replacements to do. They still have the meter to put out there, and they also have that sine wave suppressor that's going to help with the VFDs to
Right.
filter the electricity. Mr. Edmondson can probably get up here and give us a spiel on how this works a little bit better than I can, but filter it before it gets to the VFD so they're not tripping out as much.
right.
Did we
And
get a timeline from Brad?
No, and if, I'll talk to him tomorrow, and I'll try to get a timeline from him and get back to y'all. But I've contacted Alliance Electric Monday to find out about the status for the Sensaphone out there. The one at the pump station, Old Bethany Pump Station, if I call it, it just rings. Normally, I'm supposed to get a recording, and it's not. We've already had AT&T out there, and they said everything was fine. The Sensaphone box that we have on the wall there, which is a landline based, I've changed the batteries in it and everything, and it still says line in use. So I told Esther to set up a meeting with AT&T so I can meet them out there and we can try to get this fixed. Because on that end of town, we don't know until we run out of water that we got a problem. So when we get this Sensaphone hooked up at Friendly Oaks well, it's going to alert us every time the well trips out too. So we'll have record of that also. And that'll go to all of our cell phones. And we'll probably put Calvin first on that side for Friendly Oaks area because he lives right around the corner. He can go reset that well. And then if he's busy, it'll just trickle on down to the next person. But everybody will get that notification. So when, like Talbot, if it trips out, it'll come to me, Johnny, Keelan, Calvin, and one of us will go over there and take care of it.
Right, but until we get that, and then the metering device, then anytime that trips out there, then we need to keep a record of that.
Right, and it's stored on that
And
VFD.
why it tripped out,
Right.
low voltage or whatever, we need to keep a record of that.
Right, and I believe it's recorded in that VFD that Brad said that we could probably download something off of it, and I'll get with him and verify. But
Okay.
if not, then we'll just write down the date and the time and what the fault was on it.
Right.
But, I mean, that's the deal. We don't know until
it's
the
leaking,
customer calls says, hey, we got low water pressure.
Right.
Because we have nothing with the pump station. If it were to go out of water and the call box was working, then we would know. But if Friendly Oaks doesn't, if it trips out and the well's running out, but the pump station still got water, we don't know that people between there don't have water until they start calling.
Right.
So hopefully we can get the Sensaphone back, get it installed as soon as possible at least for the well fault, so it can notify us when the well trips out.
Right.
And then we can work on the tank overflow, low level, low pressure, if we have to.
And just as a reminder to council, these sensiphone improvements for Friendly Oaks and Talbot, I believe.
Talbot
Yeah,
with
were approved back in the spring of this
Right.
year.
Right.
They haven't been installed yet. I guess the electric
Wallace Electric, not Wallace, but
Alliance.
Alliance.
Been
I
busy
guess
with
been
other
busy,
projects.
because I reached out to them again, and then they called me back Tuesday and said he's working on it, and I told him that the main one I needed was Friendly Oaks, because the only thing they're gonna do at Talbot is add a tank overflow alarm on it, which we can get that, but I need something at Friendly Oaks, because, we don't get over there enough.
Right.
But until then, we're gonna make a trip 3 times a day to double check that well. And hopefully we can catch it before we run out of water.
Amen. Yes, sir.
I did notice on our usage and loss report that while the percentage is down, the amount is up from last month, over 120,000 gallons. So hopefully that one of the leaks that y'all fixed out there will help alleviate some of that. And appreciate y'all doing that Eagle Drive before school started,
Yes, sir.
and part of Franklin there. Y'all
Right.
did a good job there.
Thank you.
And I know it was hot out there,
Oh,
them guys.
And, and
God bless them.
we try to
Yeah.
try to jump on these leaks and stuff first thing in
Yeah,
the
well,
morning.
sure.
That way, in the afternoon, we can do cleanup at the shop, we can take care of our trucks. If something comes up, yeah, we're gonna go do that, but I don't want my guys to go through what Blue Bonnet did.
No, no, we don't
No,
either.
no.
Yeah.
No.
Take precautions. Thank you.
Thank you,
Everything
Gene.
y'all do, Gene.
Yes, sir, thank y'all. Okay, our engineer report?
So, Mayor, the council was provided with engineering reports from MRB Group and Tabor and Associates. I can answer any questions that you have on that.
Does anybody have any questions for the engineer reports or anything? Since y'all have that in your packet, is there any questions? Mr. Wiggins?
We still don't have anything on on that travel center, Rajan Plaza.
So we did meet with the developers for Rajan Plaza on Wednesday.
Okay.
They submitted plans about an hour before that meeting, and we have since pushed those plans to the engineers for another review to make sure all the comments have been alleviated.
Okay. What about new water well?
No additional updates on the water well. A citizen provided a couple more options for a site location that we sent over to the engineering firm.
Okay.
They're reviewing that. I did hear a comment that they have an engaged hydrogeologist, and they're just finalizing the proposal for us. So I expect that to come a little bit later in the month, next month, because they're about to deliver this hydraulic analysis to us. And so that'll probably take up the front end of September.
Yeah. How many possible sites do we have?
Right now, there's 2 main ones in contention, and then 2 additional ones were delivered for review.
Okay.
So 4.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Is there any movement on a school in SEPCO? Have you heard anything on that?
That's a good question. So I can address that one in my city administrator's
Yeah.
report,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, our court administrator quarterly report?
So, Ms. Mayor, this one was provided in the council packets as well. This is one that Esther is going to be doing every quarter, just to kind of show how the finances trickle out from the court system when the city police officers are out there doing their traffic enforcement, or code enforcement's doing some citation work. Not all the money that's collected on the city's end. I know everybody thinks that's how it goes. But the city doesn't keep all that money. A lot of it goes to the state. And so this just kind of shows where all that money's going, so you can kind of have a better understanding of how the court system works and how the financial side of the court system works.
Okay, all right. Our next report will be our city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I'll get into my spiel. Hopefully, it won't be quite as long as Sam Coe's.
He was on, that's what I said, he had a little bit more wind than you normally do.
I'll try to keep it short and sweet, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and got to keep you all informed. So, number one, Chapter 54 case update. So we were going to submit our petition. Matter of fact, we had the attorneys do all their work on it, and they've certainly already billed us for that work. However, on 8/11, we were informed that the property has gone under contract with a potential buyer, much to all of our surprise. We consulted with the city attorney on the matter, and he has advised us to hold off on filing the petition until we gain more information on the status of this sale, just to mitigate any additional costs that could come towards the city. On the next note, I provided in your council packet some information on our delinquent property taxes. Bottom line, we're about 100% collection rate on that one, and with penalties and interest, we usually go up over 100% on that. Please let me know if you have any questions about it, but the attorneys have an incentive, and they are most certainly working on every case that they legally can do so. On the sewer system, so I have not heard from Terry at USDA since this time last month, since 7/27. Tabor did send over an email today that letting us know that they have finished review of the 622 connections. There's 72 potential issues. What they did was they categorized each of those issues, and they have them in a spreadsheet kind of separated based on the condition of the property. Is the property in the city limits? Does it have a current water meter? Is it poised for development? Is it going to have a sewer connection? So right now we've got those questions pushed off to USDA for review. I should really touch base with her tomorrow and kind of see where we're at with all the plans we submitted late last month, as well as these new findings from Tabor. I know she was out on personal leave a lot of this month. On that note, Danielle, if you'll go to the next slide on that one, just some progress pictures that we have for y'all. For the sewer system, we got out and we had us a field trip, didn't we,
Yes,
Mayor?
we did.
Mr.
Enjoyed
Wiggins,
every bit
Mr.
of it.
McGruer, yep. We traveled down to Ulen with BVRT. We took a look at.
As y'all notice, excuse me, they wouldn't let me in the picture up there. It's everybody but me. I didn't get to be in the picture.
In your defense, you were the photographer.
Oh,
on this
yeah,
one,
that's right. I was taking the picture.
I forget to take the pictures. Yeah, you could have long-armed it for everybody. That would have worked out. No, but I think it was a very informative tour that we took. Mr. Wiggins graciously carpooled us down there in his luxury ride. We were all rolling high. But for the wastewater system itself, BVRT seems to have a good operation down there. This plant went into the ground in I think they said 9 months or so. Yes. It's currently serving schools. It's currently serving a lot of residential use, but they really got this thing up and running because of the demand down there is just exploding for services. Mm-hmm. So BVRT, I haven't heard back from them on the agreement. It was supposed to come in a couple weeks. I think Jeff was a little bit out of pocket, but they're supposed to be getting that to us at any day so we can get this to our attorneys and see what this is going to look like, what this could potentially cost us. But in the long run, systems such as this really would treat the effluent a lot better than a lagoon system would. It would take some heat off of the city for compliance reporting, and it would also give us some more capacity to expand as growth occurs. So it's certainly worth considering. On the water system, so Gene already mentioned it, Friendly Oaks is back up and running as of August 1st. Grateful for that. Touch on wood, as Laura always says, right? Touch wood. So we have not paid Wallace anything on this project yet. Once they finish all their work out there, we're going to have MRB out. I think I've mentioned this before, but they're going to come and do a final check, make sure everything that we've asked for has been installed and is up and running before we're given the go-ahead. I think you might have seen it in the Waco trip. There's a lot of other cities dealing with the same issue that we had to deal with. I know Woodway right now has at least one well off that's really causing them some issues. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wallace was working on that one. And so Gene was saying City of Moody is fighting these same issues. Gene already mentioned that one. I'll skip over that. So Gene, Johnny, Grady, and I, we all attended the TCEQ Public Drinking Water Conference in Austin this past month. We learned a great deal on several different resources that we can use here at the city. Of course, they got their CEUs for their water license. It was really just a good time. It was a free conference. We just kind of had to travel down there, buy a little bit of food, but the information we gathered is invaluable, and I hope we're going to be able to continue to apply that to the city of Bruceville-Eddy. On the street repairs notes, after several months of asking TxDOT to fix exit 315, they finally were able to get out there, get some crews out in the middle of the night, and get that ramp corrected the way that pothole needed to be corrected, because it just kept sinking in. So thank you for everybody who's reported that. I know we did it a few times. Chief, I know you did it a few times. Pam, I think you might have made a phone call on that one as well. So. Okay, on the development front, we did hear from Ian Cochran. He is the agent for WBW, the purchasers of Mark Fowler's land. They have submitted they're about to submit a zoning change request for that land. Right now it's designated as single family 1. They're looking to go down to single family 3. So he sent over a preliminary draft this week of that. I had some corrections on it, and he's going to be working to send that back over with their fee. For the RV/travel center, this is not a Ascent Travel Center. This is the other one that came and talked to us about being a little bit further south on Interstate 35 around the former James construction site. I reached out to them earlier in this month, just kind of getting a status update. We hadn't heard from them, just crickets at this point. We haven't heard back from them, so I'm not sure what the status of that project is going to be. Eagle Ranch, I think council is aware that we did receive a plat from them. This is the proposed housing development at the corner of Mackey Ranch and FM 107 for a total of 82 lots. These plats have been sent over to our engineering firm, and they are working through those currently. On the Ascent Travel Center, so I did just mention on that one, we had a meeting with them earlier in the week. We hope the engineer can get through a lot of those comments. The engineering firm for Ascent Travel mentioned that once they get the go-ahead, they look at about, I think it was 8 to 10 months for construction on that one?
That's what they said.
Okay. So they're still moving forward. They're still paying their bills. So we're excited about that one. And then the last one I'll mention here is CEFCO. We do have a meeting with the school district and representatives from CEFCO tomorrow morning. Continuing those discussions on Miracle Lane, see if we can come to an agreement that's going to benefit all parties. So with that, I'll end it and answer any questions you might have.
First of all, I want to make a little statement here. I give everybody I work with, I always give them, well, I can't say that word. I always give them chaos. I joke around with them and stuff like that, but I tell you what, I'm proud of working with everybody in the city of Bruceville-Eddy, everybody that works in the office, from court to water to financial, everything. They're just good working people, and Kent, I'm always, he's young, so I can pick on him, you know, so I pick on him a lot about what women do and don't do, you know, but you know how that goes with younger men. But and I love my council. The council guys, I mean, we have got a good crew. And our next election, we're going to still have a good crew. So just wanted to say that I do joke around with them, but I respect them very deeply. Okay, now I'm done. Mr. McGruer.
I have just a question concerning.
Lapel clips may be coming.
We're going to get him a lapel.
I know, I need it right here. Well, bring me a hook next time. Anyway, okay, the Chapter 54 case, if they're selling the property, will that also satisfy some of the outstanding debt?
Well,
we don't currently have any liens on that property. No, sir. The idea is to, if the property rolls over to a new owner, of course, we'll still continue to enforce our ordinances, but we would assume that the new property owner will want to make some sort of profit off of this. From what I've been told, they're a flipper. So they improve the property, get it cleaned up, our issues go away, we don't have to spend any more money on attorneys, and then we don't have to come and abate the issues ourselves and put a lien on that property.
So right
Okay.
now, it's on hold.
Okay.
It's on hold. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move right along. Okay, we have a consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda will be considered by the city council and will be enacted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless a council member or a member of the public so request. A, approval of minutes. B, finances. C, commercial meter purchase. D, donation acceptance. Okay, do we have any that needs to be pulled out or anything? No? Okay, you're going to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve all items on the consent agenda.
Okay.
The A, B, sub 1 and 2, and C and D.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Prater seconds it. Okay, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving right along. It is now, let's see, what time is it? It is now 7:36, and this meeting is now closed. It is now 7:36, and the public hearing is now open. Texas Municipal Retirement System Plan Change Council to hear public comments on a proposed charge to the city's retirement, change to the city's retirement system plan to reduce retirement eligibility from 25 years of service at any age to 20 years of service at any age. Do we have anything from the public that want to discuss any of this? Okay, no one from the public. Okay. It is 7:36 and this public hearing is closed. It is 7:36 and our regular council meeting is now open. Get my stuff out here. Texas Municipal Retirement System Plan change. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on Ordinance 8-24-2023-2, adopting a change for the city's retirement system plan that will reduce the retirement eligibility for employees from 25 years of service at any age to 20 years of service at any age. Do we have any questions or comments or a motion? Mr. Wiggins?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 8-24-2023-2.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Bass? Seconds it. Okay. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Number 16, road repair on 3rd Street. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on the estimate necessary to repair 3rd Street FM 107, located generally at the intersection of Temple Street by Lone Star Paving, in an amount not to exceed $5,000 using monies in the FY 2023-2024 budget. Work to be authorized and executed after October the 1st of 2023. Any questions? Okay.
Is this just the little spot in the road that was dug up for a water
Yes, sir.
leak, and they want $5,000 just to fill it in and?
Yes, sir.
Golly.
I'll make a point to that. I agree. So public works crews, they did have to cut into this small section on FM 107 to repair a leaking water line. There was just no option. They had to do it. TxDOT did inform us that the patch must be to their standards and utilize hot mix asphalt and a restripe. So we don't have the equipment for any hot mix. McLennan County did graciously Dura-patch this section for us at no cost. They did this a few weeks back. The patch is holding up pretty good. We contacted 4 vendors. This is such a small project for them. Consider that with the price tag, right? We received 1 quote from Lone Star Paving. They were very responsive, very helpful. Our current budget for this year for street repairs is about $2,600. So that's why I'm recommending that this come out of next year's budget. But I don't know what happens if we don't repair it. I honestly couldn't answer that. But this is what Textile is telling us that we have to do.
I have a question. I got my hand up first. Okay. So if we wait and not do it now, we can later on, if it starts sinking in, do it, right? If we get the money, or should we try to get it done now and then, I don't know. $5,000 seems like a lot of money for that one little old section. And everything. Okay, that was my question. So, Mr. McGruer?
Actually, in response to what you're saying, is you're gambling when you do that. If somebody were to drive through there, let's say it sinks,
yeah.
and they damage their vehicle,
Yeah.
we're going to buy that damage.
Yes, sir, I understand. Yeah, that's true. Mr. Wiggins?
But keep in mind, we won't do it until October.
Till October, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
All right. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it sounds to me like our hands are pretty well tied, because we have to do it to their specifications. Now, they evidently hadn't give us a time frame that we have to have it done in, so they're kind of working with us here.
Oh, okay.
But still, I mean, I'll make the motion that we have Temple, Temple Street fixed there by Lone Star Paving in an amount not to exceed $5,000 using monies in 2023-2024 budget, and work to be authorized and executed after October the 1st, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I'll second
Okay,
that, but there's
Mr.
also
McGruer?
public comment on it.
Okay, yes, sir. Hang on.
It's actually, it's on 107 or 3rd Street.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not Temple.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's-
Yes, sir. Located generally at the intersection of Temple
Temple and
Street.
Williams.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct.
Kids, they always issue these mandates, and sometimes they're very slow, and they don't furnish you the money. And it's the same thing replacing them culverts in their right-of-ways on 107. So, yes, it'll have to be fixed. Don't let them scare you, because they're not gonna get no hurry.
Okay.
I promise you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay.
If you don't know, you're digging with them, that's the way they do.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we had a 3rd Street at the corner of 3rd and Temple. It's on 3rd Street by Lone Star Paving in the amount not to exceed $5,000 using monies in the 2023-2024 budget. Work to be authorized and executed after October the 1st of 2023. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. All right. Number 17, repeal of minor curfew ordinance. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on ordinance 8-24-2023-1, repealing the curfew for minors established in Chapter 8, Article 8.02 of the City of Bruceville-Eddy and Code of Ordinance. I have, may I say, here I'm opening, I'm going to unlock it again. Okay, do we need to make a motion to do this since the state has said there is no more curfew?
That's right.
Go ahead.
Yes, on this one, this is an action item that council has to make, because even if the state outlaws it altogether, on our ordinances, we do
still
have
to
the
do it,
language.
since it's
Yeah.
already in
Yes,
a
ma'am.
thing.
And,
Okay,
and most recently, City of Killeen, several cities in East Texas have already kind of gone through the steps on it
okay.
to get it knocked out.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a motion? Yeah, Mr. Bass?
I move that we take it to approve to repeal Chapter 8, Article 6.02 of the City of Bruceville-Eddy Code of Ordinances, and this is the curfew for minors.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGruer? Okay, Mr. Bass and Mr. McGruer. Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, 18, interlocal agreement for street repair. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action to approve the city administrator to enter into a interlocal cooperative agreement with McLennan County for the purpose of authorizing McLennan County Precinct 1 road and bridge crews to reclaim, set up, prime, and chip seal named streets in an estimated amount of $3,600 as approved in the FY 2022-2023 adopted budget.
Mayor, thank you so much. Hungry Hill has been a issue for some time now. This was a road that was originally considered in your street repair committee's preliminary report on street repairs, but unfortunately there were just too many other streets that really needed priority attention this past year. So we got all those knocked out. We did have a motion by council earlier in the year to further address Hungry Hill. The condition of the street has deteriorated significantly, as you notice in that picture. That's from a while back. There's rain actually on the ground, so
It
you can
looks
imagine
like
how
something
long
I haven't
ago
seen
that
in a
was. As a reminder, we did meet with Helena and actually spoke to them a couple weeks ago. They're still agreeing to reroute the traffic through their main entrance to keep the truck traffic off the Hungry Hill Road. There are exceptions to that. They had some construction going on, so they had to route some folks over there. Weekends and evenings, they do have trucks going off of Hungry Hill. But all in all, I think we're keeping the bulk of it off. Danielle, you'll click one slide for me there. Thank you so much. So Helena is still open to considering a future cost-sharing venture with us to complete this portion of the street as recommended by McLennan County in this interlocal agreement. That, the county foreman is saying, hey, this really needs to be done with concrete to get it done right, to handle the traffic that's going down Hungry Hill on a regular basis. Right now, as I mentioned, our current amount left in this year's fiscal budget for street repairs is $2,600. The interlocal agreement goes up to $3,600. What I'm asking for tonight is that you just approve the chip seal of that 575 foot of Hungry Hill Road, which is an amount of $2,300. Was it $2,300, correct?
Right.
And then that would leave the patchwork on the rest of Hungry Hill for our public works crews to hit up.
Okay, all right. Do we have a motion or any questions? Mr. McGruer?
Just a question. If we're going to put chip seal in there, what's the durability of the chip seal that you're going to put in that area?
Good question. So the county said that this is really not going to hold up in the long term. You're probably looking at 2 years.
So 2 years until they can come up with a solution that's more durable.
Yes, we hope.
Yeah, so there's some other timelines that kind of go on with this. Yes, the sewer system.
Down the middle of the road.
And then you heard about some of your bond funding options. So maybe this is something that we look at going out to bond for, or we use some of our reserves to get a bid to concrete and curb this section here to our current design standards, and then take that to Helena and say, hey, you're the one using the bulk of this,
Right.
what can you put up to help the community? And they did mention that they'd be willing to entertain it. I don't know how serious they are on it, but that's kind of how that timeline would play out, at least in my mind.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Mr. Bastrop, you want to make a motion?
Yeah. I move, Conley Bass, I move that we approve the city administrator to enter into an interlocal agreement with McLennan County for the purpose of authorizing McLennan County Precinct 1 road and bridge crews to reclaim, set up, prime, and chip seal Hungry Hill for approximately 500 feet.
575.
575. It goes to
575.
that bridge.
For, is it 3,600 or 2,500?
So the 3,600 will give us plenty of room to work with.
Okay.
Okay. The estimate currently for that chip seal was 2,300.
Okay, so should the motion say 3,600 or 2,500?
I'll leave that up to council. A
3,600.
little wiggle room is always a good
36.
thing on
Make
our
it
end.
36, up to, up to 3,600.
Okay.
And this money will come from the fiscal year budget, 2022, 2023.
Yes, sir. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Griffin, was that you, sir? Mr. Griffin made a second. Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, it is now, what time is it now? It is now 7:50 and our regular council meeting is closed. It is now 7:50 and a public hearing is now open. Public hearing, drought continuancy plan. Council to hear public comments on the city's current drought continuancy plan. Okay. Mr. Talbert.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Mayor and council, first place, I don't want to be here. But these things are so important and what's been going on, I felt it's my duty and honor to give you information and support you for what you're trying to do. And it's tough, but it's my obligation too to share my experience and my knowledge the best I can. I've seen what goes on here for 50 years. In the last 3 or 4, I've seen more progress than I have than all of them put together before. I've been there, witnessed a lot of it, been part of it. So I'm here to support you and to help you and thank you. But I have many other, but I'm gonna wait for another time. But there are all important things. I've tried to write some notes so I don't get lost.
That's
I can't
okay,
read
sir.
my own writing, I can't see.
Yes, sir, that's all right.
To get where we were today. I'm excited and thrilled and very pleased to see what I see in this community, in this council and administration. I'm here to talk about water and what's going on. I sent Mr. Madden an article, and I know some of you saw it, probably was in the paper this week. And I think he emailed it to you. And I saw that and have many other things that come. Well, I've seen a lot of those, and some of y'all have, like the springs and things, and San Marcos and other places. And with that, it's very serious. It's serious. No water, no life. Some of you may have seen that they're going to put a pipeline from Belton to Steelhouse. They tried to do this before, but late 90s, when there wasn't any more water available from the BRA to sell, Steelhouse was a new place. It's on a different tributary than the BRA. The Leon, it's got many other creeks that run into it. It's basically fed by the Lampasas River. Georgetown needed water. Of course, we all know, hopefully, what they're doing down there. And then in that area, they're exploding. So they bought that water and run a huge pipeline down there. And I assume, I don't know, that the reason they're going to do this is Steelhouse is getting very, very low, like Belton, Lake Waco, and many others. Historically low. Waco hadn't been that low since 1971. The old dam was started being raised in 1960. When I was a boy, Valley Mills Drive, which was Highway 6 then, went across Lake Waco. I fished off of it here a couple of years ago. Of course, you can't see it. And then again, before they finished it, in about 63 or 4, it came a flood and sort of kind of flooded a lot of places. So with that, I'll try not to be too long. The droughts in the history as far back as they kept records, as many. The big one that my daddy told me about, I wasn't here, was 25. In 1949, it got hot and dry. It basically didn't rain, but it spit in the spurt, but it didn't cost much money to live, anyone as many people. They made it, but it was digging a hand well at my house, and it started raining in 57, it like not have stopped. Those big mansions in East Waco were underwater. And they've raised it again since then. In my lifetime, I've seen the droughts in that, 69, 80, 84, 90, 96, 98, 2000, 2011, and many others, including 2018 when it set the all-time record, 114 degrees. I never thought I'd see it past 112 like it was in 1969, but I won with 23. I could handle it. But since then, it's been 75 days now, not one spit. These wells that we used to pump out of, not to artisans so much, but these that as well, local wells and tanks, then many of them go dry in the 50s. There wasn't much usage of absorption of the water level to drop. 96 had a well it hadn't seen go dry, and it didn't go dry in 96, and that was historical, believe me. I had a crop failure, didn't make nothing. And the tank I had didn't go dry, but it rained some in 97, but it got dry again in 98. Guess what? Both them wells and the tank went dry. So the point is, it takes time here. It can rain, yes, it can fill. The springs have dried up, and the water tributaries have dried up. The Trinity, the Seine, and the Danube. We got to Nuremberg, had to stop, drive 100 miles and get on another boat where the water level was higher, we could keep on going. The orchards on the mountains and the side of the hills of grapes, and they depend on Philip, they were dying. It ain't just here, people. And it's a combination of many, many, many years. So I'm going to talk about some tributaries here in a minute, my approach.
Yes.
I have a handout. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Y'all keep this a look at it. I just want to first report I need to do this. Because y'all got some big decisions to make. And it's difficult. And it's expensive. But if you don't have it, it don't make a difference what it costs. Here, aquifers in the state of Texas. There's about 22 of them. 9 of them are major. The Ogallala comes from Ogallala, Nebraska, and goes through the Panhandle down to the Cap Rock about Post. It goes on down, the Edwards Aquifer ties in there, and that goes as part of the Edwards Aquifer, but it also ties in to the Trinity Sands. The Trinity Sands starts in the southwestern part of Arkansas, just a little. Comes through the southern Oklahoma, comes down through Denton, there what we call the Black Land, and comes down the interstate, and it branches out and goes a little west, and it ties into the Trinity and Edwards aquifers. There's 2 Trinities. The shallow Trinity, which used to be about 1,000 foot, now it's about 1,100. The one you like the Talbot well and the Friendly Oaks well goes to the second Trinity. That is 1,800 to 2,200 feet. And when you say sometimes our wells are losing capacity, it's also because the static level of the water is dropping in the water table and the pump needs to be dropped. And there's ways to check that. A population in 1973, I just used that because that's 50 years. I'll go back further than that, was 12 million. 12. Today, it's 31.1 million and growing. Technology's changed where windmills used to furnish a lot of things, and the water table ain't dropped, so it's efficient. But then we put electric pumps. And then more people, we're digging more wells. And then it don't rain much, and over a long period of time it accumulates. It takes thousands and thousands of years to recharge these aquifers because it comes from the north and comes on down. The coastal plains are a little exception. They got a lot of water because where they are. The other one is a major one, and there's several, you'll see them on the map, is the Wilcox, Carrizo, Sparta water table. That runs east of here around from North Bryan down to College Station and things. And there's more water there than it is in many of the 14 to 15 minor ones. To give you an example, and this is not, I mean, I ain't talked to the cities, but I'm well informed and know it's in the planning that the cities to the south that tapped Steelhouse is growing and need water. They go in there, that's 80 plus miles. And it's all groundwater. College Station's all well water. 10 of them. College Station, huge place. They gonna let them have the water and pipe it down to the southeast, and I didn't call the city's name, but you figured out where I said the Steelhouse is going. That's expensive. It ought to be a 4-foot pipeline or bigger. But the people are willing to pay it because with no water, there's no life. You can't do anything. So on that, I sent Mr. Madden a video this morning. Some others may have seen it. And I didn't know this. And I've been there. The Panama Canal. Watched them go through the canal. Stepped over it and watched them coming into this canal from a hotel room. What a sight. I assumed, and I've seen videos, or old cameras and pictures when it was being built in the early 1900s, that turn of the century, and we took it over because the yellow fever was killing the people. They didn't know what to do. So steam showed up. I assumed that it was ocean water. It is not. It is fresh inland water that they flood the locks and put it, and then what's left, sometimes they're trying to recapture it, and it goes to the ocean. It takes 100 and something million gallons to put one ship through that canal. And they furnish the cities of Panama and others with water. And it's serious. They interviewed the people there, the Panamanian people, and the people that run it, and the largest shipping magnate in the world. He said, they've cut the traffic by a third. We don't have water. And that man said, they asked him, said, how is it on the rest of the world where you going? He said, it's the same. It's serious. He said, and I want to say it, because I feel like it. We do a lot of things about a lot of reasons. But when you start hitting them in the pocket, sometimes it gets the attention. That's what it did to that shipping magnet. He said, the now is the time. We have to act. And that's what I'm trying to tell you people before it's too late. Because the water's out there under the ground, but you just got to get it. Yes, it's tough. And it was important. So I thank you for listening to me. And it's y'all's decision, but I'm going to support you. But I'm going to try to do my best to keep you informed the best I can in my knowledge and experiences. It is what it is, but I don't want to waste it. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about on this? Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am. If you'll come up to the mic, please.
I just have, it's a question. I mean, what is your contingency plan?
Okay, ma'am, at this point, until I close it and open it back up to regular, we can't answer any questions.
Can't answer questions?
Not at this,
Okay.
we can answer, once I close out the
Okay.
public hearing and reopen, then we can ask.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, all right. It is now 8:05, and this public hearing is now closed. It is 8:06, and our regular council session is now open. And the drought contingency plan change, council discuss, consider, and possibly take action on changes to the current city of Bruceville-Eddy municipal water system drought contingency plan. Ma'am, you have a question?
I'm getting my exercise. Yeah, what is the contingency plan? What is your plan to, because I know it's projected that our community, once sewer comes in, will grow. And we've got some large businesses coming in they're gonna need a lot of water. I know we have a vet clinic that wants to build here, a vet. He's gonna need a lot of water because it's gonna be large animals that he'll have there, cows and horses and stuff. So, I mean, is there a contingency plan? I know there's a well
Yeah.
being talked about in the works, but
That's a good question.
for water,
Thanks, Joyce.
conservation of some kind, or?
Yes, ma'am.
something?
So, thank you for that. There's a couple different questions that you had there. One, the water well. Yes, we are looking to secure additional sources for our water system to deal with growth, right? But the contingency plan was actually passed by council about 13 years ago. So you've got that on the books to help save the water that you do have, right? So the drought contingency plan that we have is required by the TCEQ. All retail water suppliers do have to have one. It was last revised in 2019 when the TCEQ came out and they did their inspection this year. They said, great, you've got a plan in here. Just make sure that you work to revise it. Make sure you're soliciting the public for comments such as this, and kind of put that into your future revisions of the plan. So does that kind of address your concern on that one? Or did you
Yeah.
want to know the specifics of
Yeah.
the plan?
Well, and I did notice the first guy that got up here, where water's being wasted and not.
Yeah. Yes.
I like that. That
First
I think cleaning up things and making sure about leaks and stuff is going to be a big plus. So, because I mean, water is important, especially if you're expecting growth. You have to have water. So,
You have to have
good
water to
lines, good
survive, yeah.
infrastructure, all that. So,
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
guess if I wanted details, I can just make an appointment with the
Well,
city administrator.
You can do that anytime, for
Anytime,
sure.
yes.
Our ordinance outlines the drought contingency plan, all the specific details. We do have 6 stages on that. And when our demand capacity in the water system hits a certain threshold, that's when we implement different, functions to say, hey, we need you citizens to help reduce the water that you're using. Typically, that's through irrigation, right? We say, hey, please don't water every day of the week. Please only water on these days.
Right.
Please don't wash your car outside. And then it steps up into a point where it's no longer voluntary, where it's hey, you have to do these things. And if you don't do these things, then we're going to come out there and remind you. And if you still don't do those things, then we're probably going to cite you for it, and you got to come before the judge.
Yeah, because some cities right now are taking even wastewater the sprinkler systems. I mean,
Yeah.
not the underground, but like sprinklers that people put in their yard to water.
Right, to
They're
keep
stopping
their-
them. They're pulling them.
Yeah.
Like, no, we need to. Your grass can die. You need to live, but your grass can die.
Right,
They need
right.
water. So we are looking at that, and we are, as Kent said, we're asking people to, kind of help us out right now, not to water very often. A lot of people that have animals have a separate water meter you know, and they kind of keep that down as much as possible, or keep the water in a shaded area so the heat
Right,
don't
doesn't
take it away.
evaporate,
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good,
Yes,
good,
ma'am.
that sounds good.
Sure.
Good.
Mr. Bass?
Our present drought contingency plan, this is just for like during a drought or something, how to conserve the water and not overuse it. And it starts out being more or less voluntary. And if people don't volunteer, well then, you know, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and I think our present contingency plan is just about as up to date as anybody's. And as far as I know, it doesn't need any changes at this time.
Right. Thank. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Wiggins?
Yeah, we're currently under stage 2, which, as you know, that depends on if you're odd or even. You can water like 2 days a week, you know. So, and I've looked at some of the other ones out there, like Lake Belton, City of Moody. Believe it or not, they're still voluntary. Moody is. And Troy. Now, and on touch on what Mr. Bass said, we do have some language within our contingency plan that calls, when you get to a stage 3, they don't allow hose-end sprinklers. So in other words, if you've got a sprinkler and you just got a water hose and that, but they do allow the
Underground.
yeah, their
That don't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, not the drip. No.
No, the underground water sprinklers.
Yeah. Yes.
Irrigation
Yes,
system.
the irrigation systems. And with looking at these other cities, then some of them don't have that language. For example, looking at Lake Belton, they say for residents of other water companies, stage 2 restrictions include, and they just tell you on designated days, limit landscaping irrigation, and they tell you the time. So to me, we're saying, okay, because maybe you can't afford to put in an irrigation type system, well, you just got no sprinklers out there. We're not going to let you water. Well, I think that punishes the people that can't, you know. And most of the watering times are from like 8 p.m. till maybe 10 a.m., something like that, all night long. Well, you know, nowadays you can, of course, those irrigation systems have a timer on them, so you can set a timer. But if you wanted to, you could physically turn it on, let water all night during that time. As long as it's within your time frame, you can water the whole time if you wish. You're going to have to pay for it, you know. Yeah. But I just don't, and even the hose end sprinklers, they've got timers where you can set on them if you wish. But I'd like to see us amend take a look at our contingency plans that we have and compare them with some of the other cities, and then possibly amend some of ours. And I would like to see that hose end sprinklers, I'd like to see that just gone away. Yeah, just do away with that. And maybe like the Belton does here, just don't specify whether you got hose in or irrigation or whatever. Just saying, here's when you can water.
That's it.
So I would like for y'all to do that. And so with that said, I mean, I'll make a motion for the city administrator to research this and come back to the council with some updates
Okay.
for this contingency plan.
All right, so we'll make no judgment to that, and we'll just have you write that for our next council. Can we have somebody? to
Well,
second
whenever,
Mr. Wiggins did make a motion on
Okay,
that one,
so
so.
we
yeah, I
have
did
a
make
second?
a motion.
that? Yeah. Okay, Mr. Prater seconded it. Okay, all in favor of letting our city administrator look to see, how'd you exactly work? Let our city administrator look to see what he can do about just
amending the contingency plan
To
that we have
just-
to conform it with, like some other cities
Okay,
surrounding.
all right, all right. All in favor? Unanimous, okay, thank you. Okay, number 22, land, the state of Texas owned property. Council to discuss, consider, and possibly take action on the potential sale of state-owned property that has been offered to the city after being designated by the Tex dot as no longer needed for state highway purposes. Okay, Mr. Menon?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Once again, this is our last agenda item. TxDOT has given the city priority option to secure a very small, awkward strip of land along I-35 corridor. The purchase price is currently $2,500 plus survey costs, appraisal costs, and potential closing costs, including any title insurance that we want to buy. The land seems mostly unusable at this time. However, this strip could potentially be used down the road for water, wastewater transmission equipment. Danielle, if you'll move forward for me. So this is an aerial view of the land. Of course, Council, you have your survey in your packets. I tried my best to overlay what the state had sent over. This isn't a perfect representation here by any means. But the orange triangle there is the land that would be up for sale. Of course, this is going to have to go through all the steps to get us to that. But you can see that the section actually crosses over the current drive being utilized by a business here in town, which means that we would probably have to do some easement work with that owner to make sure that they have access in and out. Next slide for me. So if council would like to move forward with this one, the funding for purchase would have to come out of the 23-24 budget. Looking at line items 50, 006682 or 83, that's our comprehensive water projects. So my recommendation on this one is just to get it before you for your consideration. I'm not making any formal recommendation one way or the other.
Do we have any questions?
I have one.
Okay, Mr. Griffin?
Is this where that mobile home burned?
No, sir. No, sir.
I can't get it in my mind where that is.
Okay, do you know where the,
Espinoza?
Yeah,
No, sir.
no, sir?
Kensley.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, when you take exit 118 off of I-35 to come to Bruceville-Eddy, you take exit 118.
118.
318, excuse me, and you take that, and you know where the storage building place is? There, they have some storage buildings, and he's now putting a fence up there. His driveway crosses over that, so that land, and it's that little strip
Danielle, can you bring
along
up
the
the
excess
map again?
road going down there.
Used
It's
to be
right there.
Big Rig Video,
And-
between Big Rig Video and First Street.
Tex dot had that when they done the highway, and then they did not need it any longer, so they're offering to let us buy it at a certain cost, you know, for future stuff, or maybe if we need a lift station or something. That's why we need people to look at it. I have if you need to look at this, I can let y'all look at this, and it gives you it's
0.1473 acres.
It's not
Very
a
small
whole
tract.
lot, but it's not tiny. It could be a lift station. It could put a little, a Whataburger probably could go there. I don't know, but
Maybe not a Whataburger. That's wishful thinking.
you know,
Could be a place, could be a place for one of those fireworks stands.
yeah, fireworks stand or
Fireworks
something, you know.
stand. They wouldn't have to have water, I mean, just, be a good spot.
So it's just that little strip there. If you take that exit, then if you look over there where the storage building is, then it's his driveway going into his business, crosses over the top corner, basically, of that land. And then it goes from there towards Bruceville-Eddy at a triangle thing.
So what council would be making a decision on tonight is not for the actual purchase. It would be for us to inform TxDOT that we're interested in purchasing this property. So I would sign the form that's listed in your packet there indicating that Bruceville-Eddy does intend to secure this property at that price, and they would begin the process of doing that. And
Yes.
of course, we'd have to bring that back before you, get with our attorneys, make sure everything's running smooth
Yes.
on the project. Couple more notes on this one. I did reach out to Tabor and Associates just to kind of put it in their ear. Hey, we don't have sewer service going to Crescent Creek, Forest Creek area yet. Could this potentially be a site for a lift station down the road? And you know, without actually doing the engineering work, he couldn't make a clear distinction. But he said that this potentially could be used in the future for a project such as this.
We have a question on the floor? No? No? Mr. Wiggins?
Okay.
I thought you was pointing to somebody on the floor, sir.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
apologize.
No, you said something about have to check about the easement for that property.
So he could,
on that.
well, it would be like a contract between him
Yeah.
and whoever buys the land, so he could have access to
You
the
don't
road
think
that
they
he's
already
already.
have one?
I don't know
We
if
don't
TxDOT
know?
gave him one or not. We don't know that much yet. We're just
Right.
checking into it.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's never a bad deal to buy land.
Amen. That's what
Yeah, along the interstate, yeah.
That's
So
what we've been talking about. Yes,
I-
sir.
I
And
would-
for the price that they're asking for it, you know.
Right. I would say that we should check into it, you know, and that's basically what we're doing here,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Is letting them know that, yes, we
We were
would like to
interested.
have first shot at it.
Yeah, that way they won't put it out there
Right.
in the open for
Yes.
other people.
My understanding is that we are informing TxDOT that we intend to buy it, assuming everything checks out.
Right.
They
All the
sent me
paperwork goes through.
a letter on that, and so I give it to Kent, and we've been talking about that, you know, we've cussed and discussed, and yay, no, yay, but then it's like, they're not making any more land, so if you can get land, you get land, or that's my opinion, and then if you don't need it later down the road, you might could sell it for more than you sell it for more than you get for
Sure.
it.
Mr. Griffin,
Mr. Griffin,
Need a motion?
I need a motion, yes, sir.
Make a motion that we let TxDOT know we're interested.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, and Mr. Prater second that. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, Prater made a motion, we adjourned.
I'll second that.
And Mr. Bass seconded. Prater made a motion and Bass seconded.
I need some paid medicine.
It is now
didn't vote.
8:20. Oh, we didn't vote. All in favor? Amen. Four, and this meeting is over. Thank you. It's
And
adjourned.
council, if I haven't gotten a signature from you on the tax rate approval, I do need that from you before I leave.